you know, and the same with video games. I think the best video game writing I ever did has mostly never seen the light of day, and probably never will, with the exception of some of the work I did on Sleeping Dogs 2, which got leaked. So it did see the light of day, but then there was a lot of sort of blowback on that. Fortunately, it wasn't me that leaked it, or we left it
That's
on
going to be our next question
or something.
Right. Yeah,
But I got some pretty hostile emails from people who were trying to figure out where it had come from, because it was me that had written it. So everyone loves, I mean, they love games for different reasons. So, and sometimes when you're making a project, you don't know why people are going to love it, right? Like Sleeping Dogs, one of the biggest video games I worked on, I wouldn't have thought it would have had fans for the reason it did, but it, you know, like there were certain things we were trying to do, and then certain other things. It's like, well, okay, look, we're going to have a story that's as good as humanly possible, but we're not selling it as a story game. And I think it really caught fire and retains its sort of audience today, even 15 years later, because of the characters and story. And that's,
which has to feel good as the writer, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'm still friends with many, many people on that team, and every once in a while we go for beer, and I'll be like, hey, look on Reddit, they're talking about this story, you know.
That's awesome.
You know, like on Mod Nation Racer, which was the same company that made Sleeping Dogs. So that's how I ended up working on Sleeping Dogs.
Yeah, and the company, was that an offshoot of, or was it Square Enix? Is that right?
Square Enix was the publisher of Sleeping Dogs. Okay. The company was called United Front Games. They were based in Vancouver. They subsequently closed, sadly, but that's sort of a symptom of the changes in the game market over the years. But they were a mainstay here for a good decade, I would say.
Wow. That's awesome. I mean, yeah, clearly if they did, you know, the older game you mentioned, and then Sleeping Dog, which is still incredible. Yeah. Because I mean, that game, Isaac is trying to convince me to get started on it because it sounds pretty good.
It's fun. It's real good. It's real good. So for Sleeping Dogs, were you there at its inception, or were you brought in later? Like, at what point did you get your fingers into it?
Sure. So that's an interesting story as well. I'd worked with them on another game, and then I had sort of been in and out helping people with things, and we became friends. And then I went away to make a movie, and Sleeping Dogs was underway. But they really wanted a writer from Hong Kong, right? For authenticity reasons, right? The game obviously set in Hong Kong. It's a gangster movie. That the Hong Kong gangster movie culture is a specific thing. And my wife is Chinese and ethnically from Hong Kong, although she was born in England. So we have, you know, those I have, I don't know, like 50 fraternal uncles and, you know, dozens and dozens of fraternal cousins. And so I was sort of putting the word out, trying to find someone, but I couldn't find a writer for them for the longest time. And in the meantime, I made a movie. And at the same time, they were being financed by Activision, and Activision pulled the plug. Another one of these crazy game stories. So the game was like 3/4 done. Activision decided they didn't like it, or they didn't want to keep spending the money, or whatever their decision-making process was. So they pulled the plug. And often when that happens, the game developer will go around all the other publishers, hoping against hope that they can find someone who will kind of come in as a white knight at the last minute. And it almost never works. But in this case, it did work. And so Square Enix came on board and said, okay, you've gotten it 90% or 80% of the way home. We're going to give you one more year to work on it. Here are the changes we want. There was all sorts of things. And here's how much money you're going to have, which was still a large sum of money, right? Go. And at that point, they had, one of the problems was they hadn't liked the story. And the writing that had been done was not didn't fit with their vision of the game. And I had just come off of writing and producing a movie, and we were editing, but I was sort of looking around for something to do. And they're like, okay, look, we need someone to start tomorrow. So we just need a writer. We can't start from scratch because there's a whole bunch of things that have been done that we can't redo. Yeah. But we want like a really big revision to it. And so I came in at the beginning of that process and stayed throughout the final development of the game, which was about a year, maybe a little more, and rewrote virtually everything it was possible to rewrite. So the core story of the game was not mine. You know, I mean, it's obviously strongly influenced by Infernal Affairs and then The Departed is the American remake of that. But the Hong Kong, I think it's a trilogy, was the sort of starting point for that story. And the characters were there. All the character art was there. You couldn't say, I want this guy to look different. Like that ship had sailed years ago. Or the action had to be different because we were, you were living with whatever action was already cooked into the game. But I pretty much rewrote everything.
Wow.
So when you say you rewrote everything, you mean dialogue? Do you mean major plot elements? Like what are you rewriting in that sense?
Well, so yeah, almost all of the dialogue, although there were a few actors who were they had a bunch of celebrity actors and some were simply too expensive to rewrite. So Emma Stone, there was no way. Maggie Q Maggie Q wanted to do it for $10,000 a day, and we just didn't really feel like that was worth it. But Will Young Lee, who played Wei, redid almost all of his lines.
Wow.
So he was available to us, so I could rewrite anything that Wei said. And Jackie was, I'm trying to think of the Hong Kong actor's name, was a really nice guy. But anyway, he was available as well. So the two main characters were there so we could redo it. And some parts of the plot changed a lot. Not the big, like he's an undercover cop. He goes into the triads. His loyalties become conflicted. Various very large anchor points, which I won't give away to spoil the game, but those weren't going to change. But whole things got scrapped and a few missions in there. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is that the story that was originally the mission is not in any way what the final product was. So with all the same animation, we basically rebuilt them as a way to give that character sort of a better relationship with other characters so that when they died, we cared about them, for instance, was something that was, one of the pillars of that game was that even the gangsters, if you liked them, then when they were at risk, you would care if they died or not, right? And so I did a lot of work on that sort of aspect of it, of making characters engaging, but at the same time, they're still gangsters, right? Or gangsters' wives, or in one case, a gangster's mom is a pretty central character, right? So yeah, a lot of that got done. And then I actually did bring in a fraternal nephew who had just moved to Vancouver from Hong Kong. And before that, he lived in mainland China. He was like 17, I think. And he was obsessive about Hong Kong gangster movies. And he knew all of the slang. And so we had him write all of the swear words and all of the sort of, all of the, like, Cantonese. There's a lot of insults baked into the way you even refer to like people you're not trying to insult, right? So it's just the nicknames they give are quite to us very insulting, but that's just the nickname that you give someone. But he gave us all the authenticity, and we went and re-recorded all of that, with the promise that we would never ever show his mom the game because that get him in serious. And apparently I don't speak Cantonese, right? So I was just trusting that he knew what he was the most authentic person we had. But I did have people that played the game later, friends of mine that live in Singapore. They're like, "Oh, I'm surprised you got some of this language past their ratings for it." And I'm like, I don't think any of them speak Cantonese either.